So I want to just go over a very simple tip that might really help you start off your novels. And now, when I say a tip, it's literally just a tip. It's not the tip. It's not something that you have to religiously abide by. It's just a piece of advice that might help you out. And if you don't think it'll apply to you, feel free to ignore it. I certainly didn't use this tip when I got started in writing, and but I kind of wish I had. So the tip is just simply, instead of getting started with your novel, start with short stories. Now, this has a number of benefits. I'd say maybe the first benefit is simply that your your first chapter can be a lot like a short story. Every chapter can be, really, but especially the first. You want there to be a very clear arc in that first chapter where you're getting introduced to your character, you're getting introduced to concepts, you're getting introduced to the world, and it needs to end with the reader or your agent or your publisher, whoever it is, hooked. And I think, I've certainly suffered with this issue, and I think a lot of people do, where they kind of hold back in the first chapter. What they do is they say, well, this story is going to go in a number of directions down the line. There are going to be all these twists and turns, and we're so excited about them. But this first chapter is going to be pretty conservative. And you almost never want to do that. Perhaps you can get away with doing something like that further down the line when you're already established writer. You've built trust. Everybody believes in your writing. Then you can kind of pad out your novel however you see fit. But when you're new, you really need to start with your best foot forward. Your first chapter needs to be blowing people away. And I think in order to get used to writing that way, it's really, really useful to write short stories. When you write a short story, you really care about every single word you're writing, right? Because it has to be contained. You can't really waste anything that you're putting down on paper. Everything has to have a purpose. Now, of course, it's harder to do that over the course of a full novel, but certainly it's a good attitude to start building into yourself when thinking about writing. And it's especially important for that first chapter. If you can make your first chapter as good as like a top short story, it's going to hook anybody. Now, the additional benefit to writing short stories and potentially treating them like a first chapter is that you can go off and query literary magazines and get that short story published. Now, maybe you decide that you're just happy with it as a short story, in which case, great, you've got something published. Or you think, no, I still want to write a novel out of this, and this is just the first chapter, in which case, when you're querying an agent, you can literally tell them, my first chapter has already been published, right? It's a proof of concept. And by having that proof of concept, you really strengthen your position when reaching out to agents. So there's so many benefits. Your writing gets improved. You can potentially be in a stronger position when looking for an agent, get a greater sense of urgency when approaching that first chapter. A great number of things there. I would say the additional benefit there too is dependent somewhat on where you're at. Have you decided what your world is going to be, what your story is going to be? If that's the case, but you still are having a bit of trouble starting, this can kind of supercharge your start, right? This can really help build out your world. Maybe this short story isn't even your first chapter, but this short story is just in the world that you have in mind. It can give you greater context about your world. It can help flesh it out in your head, which that too is useful. And of course, you can still send that off to a literary magazine. Conversely, let's say you have no idea what you want to do, but you want to write a novel. Well, trying to get down short stories means that you can start trying out all these different little ideas. And this is now no longer approaching it as a first chapter, but you're just trying to explore many different ideas, and it's not the same commitment as a novel. So by doing so, by doing a short story, little fantasy short story, a little literary short story, and one about this and one about that, by doing all of that, at the end of the day, you might find out that you've found the world that you're looking for, and then there's enough there to mine to become a novel. So it works in both directions, whether you've already got the idea or whether you're still searching for the idea. So that's my tip for this week. Try writing short stories and forego writing your first chapter, and it may very well end up being your first chapter. It may very well end up helping your writing, might help you down the line with your publishing, and so much more. So thanks. I hope you like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.